Imagine carrying an invisible backpack filled with fear, shame, and painful memories every single day. No one else can see it, yet its weight influences every decision you make. You smile when people are watching, but inside, you're exhausted. You laugh at the right moments, go to work, take care of your responsibilities, and appear to have everything under control. But beneath the surface, there is a quiet battle that never seems to end. This is what trauma often looks like. It doesn't always leave physical scars. Instead, it settles deep inside the mind, shaping the way you see yourself and the world around you. For her, the past wasn't something that stayed behind. It followed her everywhere. Every criticism felt bigger than it should because it reminded her of old wounds. Every disagreement made her fear abandonment. Every failure convinced her she wasn't good enough. She wasn't reacting only to the present moment. She was reliving experiences that had taught her to expect pain. Without realizing it, she had built her entire life around avoiding situations that might hurt her again. The hardest part about emotional trauma is that it becomes familiar. Even though it causes suffering, it can feel strangely safe because it's all you've ever known. You begin to believe that anxiety is just part of your personality. You think constant self-doubt is normal. You accept loneliness because trusting people feels too dangerous. After enough time, these patterns stop feeling like choices and start feeling like facts. Trauma has a way of whispering lies so often that they begin to sound like truth. It tells you that you're broken beyond repair. It convinces you that love always comes with pain. It says that if you expect the worst, you'll never be disappointed. Those messages repeat day after day until they become the voice inside your own head. Eventually, you stop questioning them. You simply accept them as your reality. What's heartbreaking is that many people don't even realize they're living inside these invisible chains. They think they're just being careful, when they're actually living in fear. They believe they're protecting themselves, but they're really building walls that keep joy, connection, and opportunity out of their lives. Every time they avoid taking a chance, opening their heart, or believing in themselves, the chains grow a little stronger. She spent years trying to outrun the pain. She stayed busy, distracted herself with work, kept everyone else happy, and convinced herself that if she ignored the past long enough, it would eventually disappear. But buried pain doesn't vanish, simply because it's ignored. It waits patiently, showing up in unexpected ways in sleepless nights, anxious thoughts, strained relationships, and the quiet feeling that no matter how much she achieved, something inside was still missing. The most powerful prisons are rarely built with steel bars. They're built with beliefs. The belief that you're not worthy. The belief that you'll never change. The belief that your past has already written your future. And as long as those beliefs remain unchallenged, the invisible chains continue to hold you back, making you forget one life-changing truth. The events that happen to you may shape your story, but they never have the final authority to define who you can become. There comes a moment in many people's lives that doesn't look extraordinary from the outside, yet it changes everything on the inside. There are no flashing lights, no cheering crowd, and no dramatic rescue. It's simply a quiet decision made in the middle of ordinary life. For her, that moment arrived after years of carrying pain she could no longer ignore. She looked at her life and realized she wasn't truly living. She was merely surviving. Every day was another attempt to make it through, hoping tomorrow might somehow feel different without changing anything today. She had spent years waiting for someone else to fix what was broken. She hoped an apology would heal the wounds. She believed that if the right person came into her life, everything would finally make sense. She thought time alone would erase the memories, but none of those things happened. The apology never came. The perfect rescue never arrived. Time kept moving, yet the pain remained. That was the moment she understood a difficult truth. Waiting was costing her the life she deserved. It wasn't that she suddenly stopped feeling afraid. The fear was still there. The memories were still painful. The doubts still whispered in her mind, but something inside her became stronger than the fear. She reached a point where staying the same hurt more than the possibility of change. That single realization shifted everything. She didn't need certainty before taking the first step. She only needed the courage to stop letting fear make every decision. She looked in the mirror and asked herself a question she had avoided for years. How much longer am I willing to let my past decide my future? The silence that followed was louder than any answer. Deep down, she already knew. Every day she remained trapped in old patterns was another day she gave away her power. She couldn't rewrite what had happened, but she could decide what happened next. That decision didn't erase the pain overnight. It didn't magically heal every wound or remove every obstacle. What it did was something even more important. It gave her direction. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" she began asking, "What can I do today to move one step closer to the life I want?" Her focus shifted from what she had lost to what she could still build. She started making small promises to herself, and, for the first time in years, she kept them. She allowed herself to rest without guilt. She spoke kindly to herself instead of repeating old insults. She learned that saying no wasn't selfish. It was an act of self-respect. She surrounded herself with people who encouraged growth instead of feeding fear. None of these actions seemed dramatic on their own, but together they became evidence that she was no longer the same person. Real transformation rarely begins with a giant leap. It begins with one honest decision repeated every single day. The choice to keep moving, even when progress feels slow. The choice to believe that healing is possible, even when the road ahead is uncertain. The choice to stop giving yesterday the authority to control tomorrow. In that quiet but powerful moment, she discovered that freedom wasn't something she had to wait for. It was something she could choose. Pain has an incredible ability to shape the way we see ourselves. But it isn't always the pain itself that determines our future. More often, it's the story we tell ourselves about that pain. Two people can experience similar hardships and walk away with completely different lives. One believes the experience proved they were weak and unworthy. The other believes it revealed strength they never knew they had. The event may be the same, but the meaning attached to it changes everything. For years, she believed her painful experiences were proof that something was wrong with her. Every hurtful word, every betrayal, and every disappointment became another piece of evidence supporting the belief that she wasn't enough. She didn't just remember what had happened. She carried those moments as permanent labels. Instead of saying, "I went through something difficult," she unconsciously believed, "I am damaged because of what happened." That subtle difference shaped every choice she made. Whenever a new opportunity appeared, she assumed she would fail before she even tried. Whenever someone showed her kindness, she questioned their motives because she expected rejection. Whenever life became challenging, old memories returned to convince her that history would repeat itself. She wasn't responding to reality. She was responding to the meaning she had attached to her past. Then one day, she realized something that changed her perspective forever. The past could not speak on its own. It only had the meaning she continued to give it. That realization didn't excuse the pain or pretend it never happened. It simply reminded her that while she couldn't change the events, she still had the power to change the story those events told about her life. She stopped asking questions that kept her trapped. Instead of repeating, "Why did this happen to me?" she began asking, "What has this experience taught me?" That simple shift opened a door she had never noticed before. Rather than seeing herself as someone who had only suffered, she began to recognize the resilience that had carried her through every difficult season. She noticed the courage it had taken just to keep moving forward when giving up would have been easier. Slowly, painful memories stopped becoming reminders of defeat. They became reminders of survival. Every scar represented a battle she had lived through. Every setback became evidence that she had endured challenges that once seemed impossible. She began to understand that strength isn't the absence of pain. It's the ability to keep growing despite it. Changing the meaning of pain also transformed the way she viewed other people. Instead of assuming everyone would hurt her, she learned to judge people by their actions, rather than through the lens of old fears. She became more open to trust, more willing to forgive where appropriate, and more careful not to let yesterday's experiences steal today's opportunities. Her relationships became healthier because she was no longer expecting every new person to pay for someone else's mistakes. As her perspective changed, so did her future. The painful chapters of her life were no longer the end of the story. They became the foundation of wisdom, compassion, and inner strength. She discovered that while suffering may leave scars, those scars do not have to become chains. The moment she gave her pain a new meaning, she also gave herself permission to believe in a new future, one defined not by what happened to her, but by the person she chose to become afterward. For a long time, she didn't just carry the memories of what had happened to her. She carried an identity built around them. Without realizing it, she had allowed painful experiences to become the way she described herself. She no longer saw herself as someone who had survived hardship. She saw herself as someone who was permanently broken because of it. Every decision, every relationship, and every dream was filtered through that identity. When people asked who she didn't say the words out loud, but deep inside, her answers were filled with invisible labels. She believed she was too damaged to be truly loved. She believed she was too weak to chase big dreams. She believed happiness belonged to other people, not to someone with her past. Those beliefs became so familiar that they felt like facts instead of opinions. The danger of a false identity is that it quietly controls your future. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll settle for less than you deserve. If you believe you're powerless, you'll stop looking for opportunities to grow. If you believe you're destined to fail, you'll avoid taking risks that could change your life. Your identity becomes the lens through which every experience is interpreted. One day, she asked herself a question that made her pause. Who would I be if I stopped introducing myself through my pain? It wasn't an easy question to answer, because she had lived with those labels for so many years. They had become comfortable, even though they were hurting her. Letting go of them felt unfamiliar. But she realized that unfamiliar didn't mean impossible. She began paying attention to the words she used when talking to herself. Every time her mind whispered, "You're not enough," she challenged it. Every time it said, "You'll never change," she refused to accept it as truth. Instead of repeating old lies, she started replacing them with new beliefs rooted in possibility. She reminded herself, "I am stronger than my past. I am learning every day. I deserve peace. I deserve respect. I deserve a future that isn't controlled by yesterday." At first, those words felt awkward. They didn't instantly erase years of negative thinking. Some mornings she still doubted herself. Some days, the old voice sounded louder than the new one, but she kept choosing the new identity anyway. She understood that lasting change doesn't happen because you feel confident. It happens because you consistently act in alignment with the person you want to become. Her actions slowly began to match her new beliefs. She started setting healthy boundaries instead of saying yes to everything. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. She celebrated small victories instead of criticizing every mistake. She invested time in learning, growing, and caring for herself instead of constantly trying to earn the approval of others. Every small decision became another vote for the person she was becoming. The people around her noticed the difference before she fully did. She stood a little taller. She spoke with more confidence. She laughed more freely. She no longer entered every room expecting rejection. She began to understand that confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build every time you honor your values instead of your fears. She also learned that reclaiming her identity didn't mean pretending the past never happened. It meant refusing to let the past have the final word. Her experiences became chapters in her story, not the title of her life. She was no longer defined by the worst moments she had endured. She was defined by the courage it took to rise above.